The last month or so, I've been saying over and over and over again that the Houston Rockets and their small ball lineup is not going to work. Past couple of weeks, the national media and fans in the NBA have fallen in love with this Rockets team. Russell Westbrook playing some of the best basketball of his career. Houston had won 6 of 8 games at one point. This team is heading in the right direction. Houston, we have a problem. Exactly what I've been saying the past month was on full display Thursday night, as Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers absolutely decimated the Rockets at home. Los Angeles ended up winning by 15 points, but the score was nowhere near that close. This game was over with at halftime. They were up 23 at the half, up 25 heading into the third quarter. They finally let off the gas, allowed Houston to put up a few points. As I predicted on this podcast, lack of size has been a real problem for Houston the past 2 games. Monday night against the Knicks, they were out-rebounded 65-34. The Knicks had 20 offensive rebounds, 20 opportunities for second chance points. They ended up winning by 2 points. Thursday night, completely different problem, but the same issue, lack of size. The Clippers are one of the best perimeter defensive teams in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard, Patrick Beverley, and Paul George are beasts on the wings. At one point in the game, the Rockets were 2 of 28 from the three-point line. Finished the game 7 of 42, 16% from beyond the arc. This is the problem when you have no presence inside, no presence in the paint. When you don't have a guy like Clint Capella that can get you points when James Harden and the rest of the team are struggling. If the Rockets' three-point shooting isn't falling, this team can't score. The offense stagnates. Now, people will say, this is just a bad game. Houston had an off-night shooting. But this isn't a new problem. Remember a couple of years ago in the Western Conference Finals, they were playing the Warriors. The Rockets had a 3-2 lead when Chris Paul went down to injury in Game 5. James Harden had 2 of the worst shooting games of his career in Game 6 and 7. The team followed suit and being god-awful. And the Rockets lost 2 straight to Golden State. Sent the Warriors back to the finals. I feel like a broken record because I keep repeating this point over and over. But the Houston Rockets and their small ball lineup are not legitimate contenders. Imagine what would happen if they ended up matched up with the Clippers in the first round. And make no mistake, it could happen. Only 2 games separate Houston from the 7th seed. They match up with the Clippers in the first round. They're getting fucking swept. If the season ended today, Houston would match up with Utah. And I don't think they stand a chance at winning that series. They have no answer for Rudy Gobert, a back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year who's averaging 15 and 14, shooting 70% from the floor. Who on this Rockets lineup is going to guard him? No one. We saw a glimpse, a little preview Thursday night of what's going to happen to this Houston Rockets team once the playoffs begin. All right, Behind the Line Extra for your Saturday, March the 7th, 2020. I'm your host, KC. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. I appreciate those that have already done so. I talked about the Spike Lee incident with James Dolan and the Knicks on yesterday's podcast, Friday's podcast. Spike Lee is not returning to Madison Square Garden to watch the god-awful Knicks again this season. There will be a noticeable emptiness at courtside in New York City without him being there. I said on Friday that Spike Lee is more associated with the Knicks more than any other player on this team for the past 2 decades. And that's a fact. We saw what kind of impact Spike Lee's absence had on Wednesday night. He wasn't there, and neither was mostly anybody else. No matter how bad the Knicks are, and this team has been the worst run organization in professional sports for a long time now, But no matter how bad they are, Knicks tickets are still extremely hard to come by in New York City. I told you about the game I went to last year in the Garden between the Knicks and the T-Wolves, two of the worst teams in the NBA last year. And the Garden was packed to the rafters. That was not the case Wednesday night for the Knicks game against the Utah Jazz. The announced crowd was about 16,000 people, which is 84% capacity in Madison Square Garden. Can hold up to 20,000 for the NBA. I don't believe there were anywhere close to that many asses in the seats Wednesday night. There were noticeable empty patches scattered throughout the arena. This was the worst attended New York Knicks game in almost 15 years. Some people are going to blame poor play, the Knicks are terrible, for the cause of the bad crowd. That's bullshit. The Knicks have been bad for years. I think people are legitimately angry over the Spike Lee incident. And quite frankly, I think Knicks fans are just sick of James Dolan. Chants of sell the team have been heard all season at Knicks home games. I can't think of anyone that believes that James Dolan should be allowed to own this team. Attendance in Madison Square Garden is on track to drop for the fourth straight season. I've covered at length on this podcast all of the scandals and the controversies since Dolan has owned this team. I'm a capitalist. I don't believe in governments or, in this case, an NBA commissioner being allowed to step in and force someone to sell something that they rightfully own. But I think I can make an exception in the case of James Dolan and the New York Knicks. He's taken advantage of the fact that no matter how poor the product on the court is, New Yorkers are still going to come out in droves to support the New York Knicks. Tickets are not cheap. The Knicks are one of the worst teams in the NBA, and tickets for Friday night's game against the Thunder were $256 for halfway decent seats. To put that in perspective, I paid $400 for Saints tickets in the wild card round of the playoffs back in January. And I sat at the 50-yard line. And no, they weren't nosebleed seats. They were club level. These were good seats. James Dolan's a stubborn motherfucker. I think he likes all of this controversy. He likes the fans hating him. He likes to be the villain. He likes pissing people off. Unfortunately, I think the only way he would even think about selling this team is if he began losing millions of dollars. Only way for that to happen is for people to stop attending New York Knicks games. Even though attendance has dropped temporarily over the Spike Lee incident, I don't think it's going to last long. Eventually, Madison Square Garden will be packed out again to watch one of the worst basketball teams in the NBA. And then I see a report the other day that the Knicks are interested in going after Chris Paul this offseason. President of Basketball Operations Leon Rose, who coincidentally, his first day on the job was the night of the altercation between Spike Lee and James Dolan, used to be Chris Paul's agent. Now, Chris Paul's been phenomenal this season. There's no doubt about it. No one gave Oklahoma City a chance at making the playoffs back in October. Everyone thought that they were going to tank this season. Thought they'd be a lottery team. They received a shitload of draft picks in that swap between Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul. And most people, myself included, figured CP3 would be out of Oklahoma City by the February trade deadline. But the Thunder shocked everybody this season. They're sitting at 6th place in the Western Conference, guaranteed to make the playoffs. They're not a title contender, but this season definitely has to be viewed as a success. Chris Paul's having one of the best regular seasons in years, made the All-Star team for the first time since 2016. But Chris Paul to the Knicks? You gotta be fucking kidding me. This deal doesn't make sense for either side. Frank Isola from NBA Radio on SiriusXM reported the other day that the Knicks have been, quote, gathering intel on CP3 and might pursue him this offseason. Why? The Knicks are a young team in the middle of a rebuild that's been going on for God knows how long. Hell, this team's been in the middle of a rebuild for the past 6 or 7 years. So why the fuck would you absorb Chris Paul and his massive contract, which would pay him $86 million over the next 2 years? Not to mention the fact that this is the first time in 4 years that he's played more than 60 games. He's been bothered by injuries damn near his entire career. You think that's going to get better when he turns 36 years old? And if you're Chris Paul, why would you want to end your career with the embarrassing New York Knicks? He should be pushing to be moved to a title contender. The problem is, his contract is untradeable for just about every team in title contention. Who wants to pay a 35, 36-year-old Chris Paul over $40 million a year? I can tell you, nobody. Besides Daryl Morey in Houston, who was out of his fucking mind when he gave CP3 that contract. If the Knicks absorbed Chris Paul and his contract, it would ruin their chances at going after anyone in the 2021 free agent class, which is going to be a significantly stronger class than what's coming up this summer. Not that it would really matter, because very few NBA free agents want to play for the Knicks anyway. When is the last time a superstar free agent signed with the New York Knicks? I can't think of one. Carmelo Anthony was traded there from Denver. New York City is one of the most ideal places in the country to live in, and the Knicks can't draw one superstar in this league to come there. They went after both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving last summer. Both of them said, nah, no thanks. We'll head over to Brooklyn, play for the Nets. Actually, let's get to the Brooklyn Nets, because I just saw something pop on my television screen a second ago. A move that completely comes out of left field. The Nets have released a statement saying that the team and head coach Kenny Atkinson have mutually agreed to part ways. In other words, the Nets fired Kenny Atkinson this morning. My question is the same question I have about the New York Knicks going after Chris Paul. Why? Back in 2016, when Kenny Atkinson took over a team in shambles, the Nets were a disaster. I don't know what it is about basketball teams in New York City, but neither the Knicks or the Nets can seemingly get their shit together. He took over this team coming off the heels of one of the worst trades in the history of the NBA. Back in 2013 on draft night, Brooklyn sent Gerald Wallace, Chris Humphries, and 3 other bums that I'm not even going to name, along with 3 unprotected draft picks to Boston for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry. At that time, the Nets already had Deron Williams, Joe Johnson, and Brook Lopez on this roster. So they figured adding Paul Pierce and KG would make them a real championship contender. So at the time, people were thinking that Brooklyn came away with a steal, right? You trade 5 role players for 2 future Hall of Famers? It was a disaster. Both Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett were well past their prime. They were old. They were worn down. Deron Williams was never the player that he was in Utah. Back then, he was thought to be a future superstar in the NBA. Joe Johnson was highly overpaid. Instead of blowing that team up, the Nets mortgaged their future for 2 aging legends. The result was a second-round exit in the playoffs. Not fucking worth it. And those draft picks that they traded to Boston, they ended up being Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The other pick was used to bring Kyrie Irving to the Celtics. In the end, Danny Ainge and the Celtics came away with a steal. That's the difference between an organization that knows what they're doing and an organization like the Brooklyn Nets. So Kenny Atkinson takes over a dumpster fire in Brooklyn. They struggle the first 2 seasons, win a combined 48 games over 2 years. But last season, things started to come together. They had a good young core of players led by D'Angelo Russell. The chemistry on the team was incredible, led them to the playoffs. They ended up getting bounced in the first round. Then last summer, Nets general manager Sean Marks swings for the fences. Trades D-Russ to Golden State, gets Kevin Durant in return, brings in Kyrie Irving. Everyone knew when they made that deal that 2019-2020 was going to be a transition year. KD was never going to play. The goal of the season was to get the young guys acclimated to playing with Kyrie Irving. But he's been fucking hurt. He's only played 20 games. Even with all the shit going on this year, Kenny Atkinson has this team at 28-34, 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. What more can you ask of your head coach? Maybe letting him go will work out for Brooklyn. This will be a coveted job this offseason. They've got 2 superstars, a good group of young players. Sean Marks has done pretty good in his first 4 years as general manager. But if you look at the history of this organization, I don't have a lot of faith in them having this work out. The Nets have had 5 head coaches since 2012. 5 coaches in 8 years. You fire a guy that's on the cusp of leading you to the playoffs for the 2nd consecutive year after you missed the playoffs for 3 years in a row. He's helped clean up the mess that was left over after that god-awful trade with Boston. It just doesn't make any sense to me why you would fire him right now. We'll see what happens this offseason. The timing of the firing is strange. The season's damn near over, and you're in the playoffs. Not that Brooklyn was going to make any noise in the postseason, but damn, Kenny Atkinson got you there. The team is 7-7 since Kyrie was lost for the season. In that time, they've beaten Toronto, the Pacers, the Celtics. They have a better record without Kyrie. They didn't roll over and die once he was out for the season. They came together. They've actually been playing better. That, to me, is a sign of good coaching. With Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, this isn't a team that can go out and get a young, inexperienced head coach. You don't go out and get a Jay Wright from Villanova. You fire Kenny Atkinson, you better go out and get someone that's proven. But there's just so few of those guys that are out there. I'm sure that Mark Jackson's name will come up. I'd stay the hell away from him. Like I said, maybe this will work out. We have very little information right now. This just happened about an hour ago. Maybe something was going on behind the scenes that we don't know about just yet that led to Sean Marks letting Kenny Atkinson go. Before I get out of here, let's talk about this coronavirus for a second. The NBA is thinking about playing games in empty arenas over the fear of this virus spreading. The NCAA is thinking about having March Madness, the tournament, played in empty arenas. I don't understand this hysteria, this mass fear surrounding this virus. This type of thing seems to happen every few years. Bird flu, swine flu, coronavirus, whatever the fuck. These things show up, spread like wildfire, kill a couple of people with weakened immune systems, and then they disappear, never to be heard about again. But the fear that they cause is unbelievable. People listen to the news media and allow them to scare the shit out of them for no reason. We can't stop living our lives because it's flu season. LeBron James was asked last night after they beat Milwaukee about the league discussing the possibility of having games played in empty arenas. And he flat out said that he wouldn't play without the fans in the building. I don't blame him. NBA games would be boring as hell without the crowd. A crowd can make or break a game. I've never been one to live in fear. I could go out today and get infected with this coronavirus. Okay, I'll go to the doctor, get treated for it. What I'm not going to do is quit living my life over the fear that I have a small possibility of getting coronavirus, something that kills only 2% of the people that get infected by it. Every day you walk out your door, you're at risk of something bad happening to you. That doesn't mean you don't walk out your fucking door and live your life. The news media in this country has a habit of causing mass hysteria. Every summer, when hurricane season comes around, anytime there's a thunderstorm coming off the Gulf, the media causes mass hysteria. Code red weather alert. We're going to interrupt your programming for the next 30 minutes because there's a rainstorm. Possibility of a tornado happening 60 miles away. Who gives a shit? Put the NBA Finals back on my TV and shut the hell up about the weather. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back Tuesday morning to recap the weekend. Should be a good weekend of hoops. Got college basketball, regular season wrapping up. March Madness around the corner. We have the Lakers-Clippers Sunday afternoon. We'll talk about all of it on Tuesday. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Leave me a comment in the section below. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday.